All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Facts Over Feelings podcast. This is episode 93. I'm once again joined by my beautiful co-host, Jack Eden, and my less beautiful co-host, Ryan Marister. Although Ryan's hair does look much better today.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not
good for you, Ryan. This is going to be a pretty basic podcast. We're going to basically just talk about football, most of it. We're going to start off with some college football. I'm going to hand it over to one of you two guys. I know you guys are a little bit more prepared for this segment than I am. And then we're going to finish it off with some NFL. We're going to kind of recap week one, talk about a couple games we like in week two. And then we're going to play a little game called Will Ryan Get the Spread Wrong? And Jack's pick for the week. So I think it's going to be a nice, fun, quick, lighthearted podcast. I'm going to toss it over to Ryan, though. I already insulted him once, so I'll let him get this podcast
Thank
started.
you.
So,
I mean, you had a little backhanded compliment. My hair wasn't as bad as last week, so I appreciate that. But look, I just want to say it's finally a podcast where we have no NBA discussion. I mean, I don't even know what it's like anymore. It's beautiful. We get to dive right into some football-only podcasts. It's great. It's we're heading into the fall here. It's nice. But look, there's a few things I wanted to say. Talking about college football, it's been an interesting start to the season, and I wanted to highlight a couple of things, and then I'll toss it over to Eden to talk about whatever he wants to talk about. I just want to say two things, actually. One, Georgia should be the unanimous number one team in the country. If there's any doubt about it, this is kind of the one thing I wanted to hammer home. They're by far and away the best team in the country. It's not close. They've given up 10 points in 3 games, right? Granted, one of those games was against Samford, but look, they beat 11th ranked Oregon. I can't get over this. They beat 11th ranked Oregon 49-3 in week one. I mean, just absolutely smothered them. And then they won against Samford, 33-0. And then I think they beat South Carolina today by a score of 38-7, something to 7. It was something in the 30s to 7. It wasn't close. Point is, Georgia is by far and away the best team in college football. Amazing defense, obviously, seemingly having carried over from last year, even after having the number one pick in Trayvon Walker this past year, which is crazy. You give up all this defensive talent, a lot of draftees, the number one pick, and your defense is still this strong. I mean, it's crazy. Mark of a great program. They've done a great job. They don't have a great quarterback. What is it? Stetson Bennett, I think, but they're fine. Their running game flows. They get what they need to, they get what they need to in the passing game, and they destroy teams. So I just wanted to shout them out because they're by far and away the best team in college football. I don't think it's close. And it can't be up for debate. I just wanted to establish that. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add on that. They can in a minute. But I just wanted to say that because that's totally what I saw these first 3 weeks, just absolutely demolishing teams and one quality opponent. So, Trevor has to throw a little respect on the SEC teams' names, because
I do every
Georgia actually, scheduled a quality out of conference opponent. So, hey, respect to them. So that's great. And the other thing I want to talk about was the other SEC team. I'm the SEC guy. I'm sorry. In Alabama, I know Trevor's going to have a little fun with them. I'm sure he'll talk about this a little bit. Last week against Texas, again, I respect them for scheduling a game in Texas. They could have just easily scheduled another awful FCS team, but for once they didn't. And I respect it, but they struggled. They looked really bad. And I kept telling these guys when we were watching this game, we were all talking throughout this game. And I was like, look, they'll get it together. They'll be fine. And they didn't really get it together. I mean, the penalties were awful. Sloppy play. Nick Saban must have been absolutely livid. I mean, he must have been furious. I'm assuming he'll fix it for the rest of the season because he's Nick Saban. But I mean, that was just horrible. The corners especially were really, really, really bad. Guys were either open or they were blatantly committing PI to get it. It was just awful. It was really bad. So they did not look like Alabama. Bryce Young was the only guy that showed up, in my opinion. He finally showed up in the fourth quarter. And to me, single-handedly won them that game. No one else seemed to be doing much or stepping up. He avoided a blitz that should have resulted in a sack. I mean, it was awful. The guy came in with absolutely no control at all. And Bryce Young won them that game. So respect to him for getting it done when he needed to. But that was way harder than it had to be. And it made me concerned because Bama normally has a lot of discipline. They normally just have overwhelming talent and don't make mistakes and just roll teams, right? But that did not look like Bama last week. So I'm a little nervous about it. I still think they're going to be great, but it was something that I was surprised by because I kept telling you guys, right? I kept saying they'll be fine. They'll get it together. I even made a little bet with Trevor on the game at halftime and I ended up winning it, but it was way too close. I mean, it was, and it was the backup quarterback of Texas too, which Trevor, endlessly reminded me. It was the backup quarterback, right? If it was the starter, they'd probably lose that game. But yeah, Bama did not impress me. It didn't impress anybody, to be honest. And like, can they get it together? I think they can, but like, it was concerning. It was kind of weird. So anyway, I'll pass it over to Eden. I don't know what you have to say about any of that or anything else in college football this past week, but go ahead.
Yeah, just to emphasize more on that Alabama game, I think
Yeah.
it was obvious that they clearly escaped with a win. I think Texas was the better team the entire game. I think, you talk about that injury to Ewers, which really hurt Texas, and they couldn't move the ball in the second half. And then you talk about the 19-yard field goal that was missed, and like play after play after play. It just seemed like Texas had everything going their way, and they were one play away from winning that game. And ultimately, I think they should have. But Alabama, is Alabama, and I ultimately had a feeling that they were going to find a way to figure it out. I didn't think it'd be that ugly, but they got the job done. And whether it's a 1-point win or a 30-point win, it's a win for Alabama. So that was a big win for them. But they didn't look great. And sticking with the SEC, since Ryan's the SEC guy and loves touching on the positives of the SEC, how about this App State Texas A&M football game where A&M paid them what $1.5 million to come play them?
Yep.
And couldn't move the football. And I don't know if that's led to a quarterback change, but I know that there were talks about that for A&M this week. And it's just, I don't know, those two performances from top teams, two of the top three teams in the SEC playing non-conference games, looked a little shaky. And I don't think that impacts how I look at the SEC. And I still think it's the most dominant conference in football. But it just shows you that like the sport of college football is so much fun because any given team can lose on anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that as a fan to watch both of those games and watch those come down to the wire was a lot of fun. Just looking for that upset and rooting for that. But otherwise, man, I mean, I didn't really watch a ton of college football. I watched those big games. But yeah, that Texas one hurts. And you can look back and say, if this had happened, what would be different? And ultimately, they were the better team and still weren't able to end up with
And Eden, it's crazy. Before Trevor goes ahead, I just want to say it shows you like how a team, like an unranked team playing against one of the top teams in the country, just shows you how much has to go right, for you to not only have a chance, but win the game, right? Like everything was perfect for them almost, and they still lost. Like, it's crazy. It's just wild how, these top teams seem like a lot more often than not scrape out wins they just don't deserve. But Trevor, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have a lot to say about college football. I'll start with this. I'll start with the Texas-Alabama game. This notion that everything went right for Texas, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think Texas was hobbled. Texas was almost on their third quarterback. If you guys saw, their second quarterback was limping most of that game.
It's true.
And you saw what Quinn Ewers, the starter, was doing to that Alabama secondary. He was throwing it down the field, down their throat, and he was moving the ball at pretty much with ease against this Alabama defense. And what surprised me was Alabama's pass rush was not as, dominant as I thought it would be. I thought Will Anderson had a very poor game. He had a couple of penalties. He had that 15-yard late hit penalty, I believe, in the second half of that game. And it's kind of like what Ryan touched on. Alabama did not look like Alabama. They weren't disciplined. They couldn't run the football outside of that 180-yard run, which, look, I get helps. But outside of that 180-yard run, they only averaged 2.5 yards a carry. They really couldn't move the ball for a large part of that game. Texas's defense, which was not supposed to be great this year, they're much more known for their offense. Texas's defense forced 6 straight punts in the middle of that game, including 4 3-and-outs against the Heisman winner and Bryce Young. Mm-hmm. So what does that tell me? One, the landscape of college football is changing just a little bit. I think we're going to start seeing this monopoly at the top kind of break up a little bit. And that's due to several factors I've talked to Ryan about. I think NIL is a big deal. I think the transfer portal is a big deal. And I just think, I forgot what the third one was. I thought I had a third one prepared, but it's mainly those two that are going to change the landscape of college football a little bit. And for Texas, I think Steve Sarkisian's the guy. Look, you ended up losing this football game, but this is a win for your program. If you're the Texas Longhorns, you no longer, right? I saw a great segment from Joe Klatt, who went on Colin Cowherd's show in the middle of this week, and he goes, Texas isn't screaming that they're back anymore, at least under Steve Sarkisian. They're going through the process. They're taking it day by day. I think Steve Sarkisian is kind of like revamped the work that goes in during the week to winning a college football game. And I think he's going to instill that mindset into his team. And I think it's going to show. And I think he's the right guy for the Texas job. And I think he outmaneuvered and outcoached Nick Saban in that game last weekend. Look, so it was a loss,
right?
But it was really a win, I think, for the Texas Longhorns going forward. If I'm being real, look, you lost the game, but it's a win for your program.
And Trevor, can I just say, that's why I said, like, I think like everything went right for Texas. Like, outside of the injuries, right? They outcoached them. They had fewer mistakes. They were better on both sides of the ball, right? It was just small things that just didn't go their way, right?
To further touch on Alabama, this Alabama team is not as good as Alabama teams in years past. This team is not as dynamic at the receiver position. The offensive line is not as good. The secondary is not as good. The defensive line is still really good. It wasn't great against Texas, but this Alabama team is not as dominant as teams in years past. And I think they're going to be very beatable in SEC play this year, in an SEC that is very deep.
Yes,
it might not be as like, I'm not even going to go there, but it's just a very deep conference, a lot of good teams. So Alabama could be in a little bit of trouble this year. We'll see. And to touch on the Texas A&M game, I don't think I've ever been happier to see a team lose a game than Texas A&M.
Oh, yes, you have.
You pay a team $1 million, you trash their intelligence, you make fun of them as rednecks, idiots, blah, blah, blah. They don't have brain cells at your rally the night before. Just to lose on your home field, that's just such a rewarding feeling as someone who likes to cheer for an underdog. So I'm happy that Appalachian State won. College Game Day was there today. Luke Combs, shout out to him, was the guest picker, one of my favorite country artists. And to wrap this college football segment up, I'm going to wrap it up with this.
Go ahead.
I'm going to channel my inner California snob here and talk a little bit about USC. USC is
Colin
back.
Cowherd 2.0.
I actually look. I'm referencing this Colin Cowherd, Joe Klatt segment. This is very interesting. I want you guys to hear this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Joe Klatt said, he goes, remember that Oklahoma team with Kyler Murray that made the college football playoff in 2018, right?
Mm-hmm.
That team on offense averaged 8.6 yards per play. This USC team on offense, on average, averages 8.62 yards per play. What did that Oklahoma team average on defense? It was not a very good defense. That Oklahoma team averaged 6.3 yards per play on defense. This USC team, albeit against weaker competition to this point, averages 5.1 yards per play given up on defense. So what does that tell me? In a weaker conference, an efficient offense, a defense that will be good enough to not lose you games until you get to, playing elite teams, USC can make the college football playoff this year. I really believe it. I think they can run the table. I think they can go undefeated. And if they do go undefeated, they will make the college football playoff. I'm going to make that statement right here, right now.
That's interesting. That's an interesting discussion. Does a one-loss SEC team get in over an undefeated USC? And that's a question.
Because you look at
what's USC's out-of-conference wins. What will they be?
It's not great. I mean, they play Fresno State.
Because they played Stanford last week, which was a Pac-12 team.
I forgot who they played week 1, but it wasn't a good.
Did they play Notre Dame this year?
They will play Notre Dame.
We didn't talk about
They will play Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's awful. So
USC plays Notre Dame every year. It's like a rivalry tradition.
Okay.
Interesting. But I'm just telling you, boys. Look out for USC.
Yeah,
they have the blueprint to make the playoff. My bad. Go ahead.
No, you're finishing.
I was just gonna say they have a blueprint. They have an offense. And I think with a weak conference like the Pac-12, they'll get a couple of good wins in there, beating Utah, beating Oregon, winning the Pac-12 title game.
SEC teams,
I think USC is gonna have enough to make the college football playoff this year.
Yeah, it'll be.
I'm making that statement right here on the podcast.
It'll be an interesting discussion, Trevor. Like I'm interested to see if they go undefeated. Do they get in, or are they on that 5 spot? It'll be interesting. I can see the argument for both sides. At the end of the day, look here. Let me just say this: USC. I've grown up watching college football. What are they known for? Choking. What are they known for? Losing to teams they shouldn't.
USC's known for
choking. Look, every year, and they have a new coach, Lincoln Riley. They have a new quarterback, Caleb Williams, right? Like it's a different team, it's a different atmosphere. But prior to this year, it's always been they're top 10 ranked, even top 5 back earlier in the 2010s. and they would lose, and then they would fall off. They'd lose the teams they shouldn't have, and they'd fall off. Now, that might be different this year. We'll see. Maybe they run the table. Maybe they go undefeated. They do have a more talented team. They have a better coach than they've had in the past. Who knows? They might do that. I will say they needed this new coach to get them prepared for the SEC, right, when they come in. Or are they going to SEC? No, they're not. They're going to the Big Ten.
They're going to the
Sorry.
Big Ten.
Yeah, sorry. Still almost as good, better than the Pac-12. But also, that's so weird. Big Ten, so weird. USC, Big Ten, just feels weird. But they're going to need that. So, they're going to get out of the Pac-12 in the next few years, which will also help their prospects getting in the playoff. But also, it doesn't really matter because it's 12 teams by then. So that'll be another discussion that we need to have, talking about that a little bit. But anyway, I don't know. We'll see. It'll be a fun discussion if they go undefeated, if they make it in that 4 spot or if they'll be that 5 spot. Before we move on from college football, I just want to bring up one more thing, and that's Notre Dame. We didn't talk about Notre Dame. I want to talk about Notre Dame because, I think Trevor and I are in the same boat, and I don't know why. I don't know if public sentiment is in our favor here or not, but we just love it when Notre Dame loses. They're similar to USC to me. They're similar to how Miami used to be. They're consistently overrated, consistently put in that top 5 at the start of the year. More overrated, maybe, to be honest, right? They're put in that top 5 and they're there the whole year. They're there the entire year. Then they get embarrassed at the end of the year, against a quality team. And look at them this year. They wasted no time in getting embarrassed. Let me tell you that. They lost to Ohio State, and Trevor gave them a little bit of props. I remember Trevor saying they looked decent. They didn't look too bad, right? They held their own against an Ohio State team, right? They go out against Marshall and just look absolutely awful. I mean, it was embarrassing. Pick 6, like no offense.
They got outplayed, yeah.
Marshall was like full of energy. They were just demolished. It wasn't even. I mean, it was unbelievable. That offense looked awful. Like, they benched their quarterback and put in their backup who, couldn't do much either. It was really bad.
All right, so I got to ask you guys. I think I'll know Ryan's answer.
Yeah, I was happy to see.
Who had the worst loss, Texas A&M or Notre Dame over the weekend?
That's a really hard question.
I'm going to go with Texas A&M. I think it's a fairly obvious answer for me. It's Texas A&M. And there's a couple of reasons why, but
yeah, I'll go Notre Dame just to be different, but also there's a reason for it. Eden, what do you think?
I don't know. That's a very good question. I think I would have to lean with A&M just because I think
a much worse loss.
They are.
Why? I'm curious. Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, that's kind of my point, right? A&M's a better team, and so sure, that might have been like a worse loss, but the Notre Dame loss looks worse because to me, like, one, they're such a popular, hyped up team all the time. A&M to me was not publicly, nationally hyped up. Like, they're just kind of there.
This year they were, absolutely.
Were they? Really?
Absolutely.
Really? Oh, I didn't.
They were like preseason top 5. They were 5 or 6.
So was Notre Dame. Notre Dame was ahead of A&M. Notre Dame was ranked higher than A&M
by 1 spot. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and Notre Dame's talked about a lot more. Look. The reason I say Notre Dame is they're talked about a lot more. They're in the limelight a lot more. They're like a big focus. Outside of Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, Notre Dame's probably the most talked about team outside of those 3, to be honest with you, right? And for them to lose like that, to Marshall at home was embarrassing. Both losses were, to be honest, in my opinion, equally embarrassing. But because Notre Dame gets more of the limelight in the national media, I think it's more embarrassing.
This is just a little side argument. I just thought I'd throw this in. I knew Ryan was going to defend the SEC.
No, go ahead. Why do you think
it's Texas A&M loss is way worse? One, they're not transitioning in coaching staff, right? This is a new coach for Notre Dame, a new program. He doesn't have his players yet. And I get it. It's Marshall, but it's a new coach, right? He hasn't gotten the chance to really lay his foundation on the program. Jimbo Fisher, 10-year contract, $100 million, $90 million buyout. I'd start considering that if I was Texas A&M. Has his players. He's built the program. They've poured millions of dollars in NIL money into this. And what makes it worse is that video from that rally, I think, makes it a little bit worse too, making fun of Appalachian State.
They do that all the time, yeah.
I get that, but like they took it a little too far there.
Maybe.
And for me, it's like you have college football playoff aspirations, and you're not consistently overrated as much as Notre Dame is. I think Notre Dame is consistently overrated every year.
Yeah.
Texas A&M is too, to a certain extent. But to lose a game when you pour this much money into your program, you have a coach who's been there now for a few years, is just embarrassing. For me, there's more excuses to make for Notre Dame than there is for Texas A&M. in this particular situation. And I think Jimbo Fisher, I saw a great video from 247 Sports. Jimbo Fisher has play sheets and play sheets on game day, laminated sheets, hundreds of plays. The guy doesn't get offense. The guy's offense is ancient. It's from 2014. It doesn't work. It's aged milk. And Texas A&M couldn't move the ball against Appalachian State. They scored 14 points, and they have talent. They have NFL players. Appalachian State does not. I think this was just a pathetic loss for A&M.
So what's the difference? Does Notre Dame not have NFL talent?
New program, first game, a lot of pressure.
But that coach was there for years. I mean, he was the D coordinator.
But I get it, but it's a
new
head coach. He doesn't have his players yet. I think there's more excuses to be made for Notre Dame than there is for A&M.
All right. Eden, is that a similar argument that you were going to make? Is that kind of similar? I'm just curious. I already said what I wanted to say.
I was just laughing at the aged milk joke. I liked that one.
Yeah. I don't know if Jimbo's his offense is that outdated. I mean, all right. Okay.
You can't score against Appalachian State.
You ever thought that maybe it's because they're starting a true freshman who's very new and has a ton of talent?
But he's probably missing, a 5-star, highly touted, top 10 player.
If you watch the game, he was missing open guys. I mean, he was clean missing. He was literally missing open guys on the field.
I'm sorry, but how are you so hell-bent on defending Texas A&M losing to Appalachian State?
I'm not. It was an awful loss. I'm just saying.
I can't believe this.
There's more blame to go around. And if we want to go deeper into this, A&M's been like this for years. I told Trevor, look, they've been like this since the Kevin Sumlin era. They would beat the best teams. They would go out and beat Alabama, and then earlier in the season, lose to an awful team. And this isn't new for A&M. This isn't like a coaching thing. This is like a program thing. This is a thing that programs consistently lose to awful teams.
How is this a program thing? That makes no sense to me.
They keep losing.
That's
to
not
bad
a
teams
program
across
thing.
Coaches.
Ryan, that's not what the program does. The program pours in millions of dollars, state-of-the-art facilities. The fan base has rallied behind.
Then look, you look at a team like an organization like USC.
It's not a
before Lincoln Riley.
Issue.
Before like Lincoln Riley, they had like 5 coaches. Every single coach would lose to awful teams. At some point it becomes like a systemic thing within the team.
It's not.
All right.
Alabama doesn't.
Yeah, they don't. You're right. They don't. I agree. It's not a thing within Alabama.
It's not a systemic thing. It's called college kids who don't come ready to play against teams that have nothing to lose. It happens all the time. And it
happens to some teams a lot more than most. A lot more than most.
But it happens. It just happens. It's rare, but it happens. And when has Texas A&M lost a game like this? Maybe they lose to a bad SEC team here and there, but they've never lost to an Appalachian State, right?
I have to go look.
When's the last time Notre Dame's lost to a Marshall? I can't even remember the last time that's happened.
Yeah, it's not a thing within Notre Dame. That's why it's so surprising, right? Notre Dame's been the pillar of like quality play, right? No matter how much I make fun of them, they've been really good for a long time. And for them to struggle the way they have this year has been embarrassing. Yeah, I agree. But anyway, look. We can move on from this. I mean, Eden, do you want to say anything else?
Not really on this, but I wanted to say in terms of USC, I think they have all the talent there. I just think that they're a year away. So could they go undefeated and make the playoff? I think they could, but I think it's going to take another year of Lincoln Riley settling that team in and getting everyone together to eventually get there. So I don't see that happening this year. And in terms of, big upsets, we'd love to see an Old Dominion win today. But other than that, that's all I got.
Get out of here with that. Look, with that, we'll move on from college football, and we'll go talk about our favorite sport right now, the NFL, obviously in full swing. It was nice to be fully back for week 1. And my Cleveland Browns won finally for the first time since 2004 in week 1, and first time since 1997 winning a week 1 away game. Eden, I appreciate you not being a doubter like I was. I doubted. I did. Look, you have to understand, as a Browns fan, you grow up with that doubt. There's just that doubt's always there. But Eden didn't doubt. So I appreciate it. So anyway.
Sounds like a Suns fan right there.
Honestly, yeah. But look, we won. It was great. And I don't know. We can start by talking about maybe a couple main takeaways we had. I don't know if anyone wants to start us off. Eden, I don't know if you had anything from week 1 that was like kind of just stood out to you, something you were surprised by, disappointed by, like something you were like pleasantly surprised. I don't know, anything like that. Any teams or players stood out?
Yeah, I wanted to say, which kind of might be a little bit of a hot take, but I was disappointed in the AFC West in week 1. And here's what I'll say. Outside of the Chiefs, who clearly
Yes.
absolutely dominated the Arizona Cardinals,
Yeah.
they, at least in week one, appeared to be the class of the division. And as we're talking about this right now, they
Yep.
played the Chargers on Thursday night and beat them there. So they're 2-0 and in first place in the division.
Yep.
But in terms of, first of all, Denver, I think that's the most obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
How do you not win that game when I think you basically double Seattle's yards. It was like, when I looked at the end of the game, it was like 420 to like 260 or something like that. So you significantly outmove them on the field.
Yep.
You were just so undisciplined and made so many dumb mistakes. I thought Nathaniel Hackett's coaching decisions were terrible, especially at the end of the game when there's a minute left and it's either 4th and 5 from the 45 or you're kicking a 64-yard field goal to win the game. I thought that was terrible. You should have called timeout and gone for it there. Russell Wilson, 2 fumbles on the goal line. The defense didn't look good. Like, you're giving up. Geno Smith is picking you apart in the first half. Geno Smith, man. Like, they did not look good at all. So I was very disappointed in the Denver Broncos. And then additionally, I was expecting this big classic game in week one from the Chargers and the Raiders. You know, these two teams who in week 18 last year were fighting it out, went to overtime in terms of if one or even both of them could go and make the playoffs. And I thought Derek Carr looked sloppy. He had 3 interceptions. I think the Los Angeles Chargers kind of do what they normally do. They'll get up ahead and blow a game late, or potentially give, Derek Carr a chance to blow the game late. Like, 24-19 was a lot less scoring than I expected in that game. And so those two teams also kind of disappointed me as well. So in terms of losers for the division that we all hyped up this year, being the AFC West, to go 2-2 and one of those wins be a close kind of dogfight between two of the better offensive teams in the division, I was very disappointed by.
Yeah. Trevor, I don't know if you have anything that you wanted to either add on or say, just in general.
I think the AFC West is an interesting point. I disagree with it. Look, we're all going to make this mistake and we're all going to overreact to week one, right? We're all going to say that, the Broncos this, the Raiders that, even though McDaniels is a failed head coach already, which is why I picked Las Vegas to finish last in the division. I think the biggest worry from the AFC West is Nathaniel Hackett. I think his coaching was horrendous. His time management was awful. And he lost them that game, in my opinion, along with the mistakes that they made. But look, mistakes and discipline is coaching. We always say that all the time. Penalties are coaching. And to me, Denver just didn't look like a regular season team there yet. They didn't play Russell Wilson in the preseason. They clearly wanted to be careful with that. So to me, that felt like a preseason game for the Broncos, just with all the mistakes, the fumbling at the goal line.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Here's why I'm not going to overreact. They will win that game 9 times out of 10 with the stats that Eden read off. They had more time of possession. They had way more yards. Russell Wilson really didn't play bad. He threw the ball very well, in my opinion. And you're not going to fumble the ball from the 1-yard line twice in a game, maybe ever again this entire season. So I'm not going to overreact to Denver. I'm not going to overreact to the Chargers Vegas game. I just think divisional games are always very competitive. They're always very weird in just how they play out. I think there's things that happen in divisional games that don't happen in other games. So I'm not going to overreact to that game either. And Kansas City, albeit they were, playing against a practice squad of cornerbacks in the secondary, but Kansas City did look really good. They hammered my Cardinals. The one team I want to talk about is I was going to talk about the Buffalo Bills, but
go ahead.
I mean, we already know Buffalo's going to be dominant. I'm going to switch gears and I'm going to go to the NFC. And I want to talk about Tampa because I was not impressed with Tampa at all. I just didn't see it with them. It felt like they were a little stagnant on offense, although Fournette was very good running the ball. I don't know. Something just seemed off with Tampa. I thought their defense was very good, but I wasn't entirely impressed with them in that game. And look, you get the job done. You win the game. It's week one. But I think that points to the NFC is wide open. right?
Yeah.
Tampa looked really bad week 1. The Rams looked really bad week 1. The
Packers looked
Giants
really
are all of a
bad week
sudden winning
1.
football
Niners.
games. So I think my bigger point here is Tampa not looking great. The NFC is just wide open. I mean, anybody can win the NFC. There's no clear-cut best team, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, the Packers looked awful. The 3 favorites of the NFC were, the consensus was the Rams, the Bucks, and the Packers. They all looked bad week 1. So my point is, the NFC is wide open. Don't overreact to week 1. And let's see what happens week 2. I think there's a lot of interesting games week 2. I think the Detroit Lions will win as a favorite for the first time since 2020. I think that'll be a game that I'll pay attention to just because, you want to see the Lions win. And one other thing I wanted to talk about, I said it during the Eagles-Lions game. I said, I'm going to come on here and rip Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm actually going to praise Dan Campbell, and here's why. The sign of a good head coach is your team never quits. And the Detroit Lions never quit. They were down, as Ryan said, by 20 in that game.
It looked like I was going to be right on the line.
And you weren't. You were wrong. Just wanted to throw
you're
that out. The Lions never quit. They play hard. They're still not there talent-wise yet. So I'm going to praise Dan Campbell, and what he says is working, at least in that competitive fire aspect. The Lions will never hand a team a game this year. And we saw this last year. The Lions made it hard on a lot of teams to win games. They just didn't have any talent. This year, they have some weapons on offense. The defense still needs a lot of work, and they're going to win a few games. They're probably going to win 4 or 5 games this year, and they're going to make it hard on a lot of teams. Why is Ryan doing that with his face? But okay.
They're going to win 4 or 5 games. Whoa. I've never heard such praise from a 4 or 5 win team. Look, I'll wait till
you got to give a team time to rebuild, and the fact that they will never quit tells me that what Dan Campbell is saying at least keeps his guys motivated no matter what. And I think that's a good thing, and that's something you want in your head coach.
All right. Let me just say this. Trevor, you should have come on here and ripped Dan Campbell just a little bit. You should have a little bit. I honestly understood what you were saying. Look, here's the thing. This team has a lot of fight, right? We've said this for over a year now, right? He's an inspiring coach.
You said it for 1 year. He's been there for 1 year.
I said over a year. Okay, he's technically over a year.
A year and a game. You're right. Okay, fair enough.
Exactly. My point is look, at some point, I'm just going to need to see this fight, this fire from this team translate to like an actual win. What did they start? What did they start 0-8 last year? And it was like, they almost won. You know what team almost won for years? The Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns went 2-15. They'd go 3-13. They'd lose almost every game of the year. I remember growing up, Peyton Manning was on the Broncos. The Cleveland Browns were winning the entire game and then choked away and lost the game. We were so close. The fight, they tried so hard. They were playing so well. They're such a team with not a lot of talent, but they were so close to beating a team that was a lot better than them. At some point, I want to see not just like them being close to beating these teams, but actually beating these teams. So that's all I'm saying. I just need to see it this year. Like I love the fight. They never give up, sure. But I want to see it actually translate to a couple of wins. So, if it translates to a couple of wins this year, then
what's a successful season for Detroit this year? Like, what's like a good season for them this year?
How many wins did they have last year? What, 3 or 4?
I think they had 1 or 2, maybe.
Did they really only have 1?
They had at least 4.
Yeah, Eden, do you mind checking for a
wasn't
second?
Their first win in week 12 against the Vikings or something?
No, they beat the Cardinals. Remember that?
Oh yeah, they did. I forgot about that. They won 3 games.
Yeah, Eden, do you mind? I'm just I'm curious.
The Vikings, the Cardinals, and I can't remember another game they won last year.
Because look, you have to understand they're also in a pretty a weaker division. The NFC North isn't a strong division, right? It's not.
They were 3-13-1 last year.
Okay. They were 3-13-1. Yeah, look, I'd like to see them have at least 5 wins at a minimum. You want to see some small progression, and I know they don't have a ton of talent, right? But they have high draft picks for the last for a while, right? So you'd think over time you collect enough talent. Their receiving room's pretty solid. Their running back room's pretty good, right? They don't have a good quarterback, but you've got some skill position players on that offensive side,
line.
Right? They got a good. They have some good corners, I think. If they can stay healthy, that they drafted the last few years. We'll see. But my point is, I want to see a little improvement in the win column. Even if it's from 3 to 5. Right? I want to see that. So we'll see. If they go out and have another 3 or 4 win season in a weak division, I'm just am I that impressed by Dan Campbell? Not really. No, I'm sorry. Like I just need to see a little bit. So yeah, I mean, look, we'll see what happens with that, but that's kind of where I stand there. Yeah, Eden, go ahead, say something.
First I'd like to say, they won 5 games the year before Dan Campbell came in. And they traded away their best player and their franchise cornerstone in Matt Stafford and returned Jared Goff. So I don't get the slander on only winning 3 games last year. Dan Campbell's first time as a head coach. You trade away your only real valuable piece, in my opinion, that helps get you wins. And you're building this thing from scratch, ultimately. Like, you're bringing in all these young guys, all these guys who have been, like, you were on a 5-win team before. It's not like you're coming into a team with a ton of talent, right? And last season you win 3 games, but one of those games was against the Arizona Cardinals, who were, I don't know if they were undefeated at the time or
And they
like
whooped
8-1
us.
or something.
They whooped us.
And it wasn't even close. Like, and I think the other point too, Trevor was talking about ripping Dan Campbell, and then they come back and make it a game and turn it to 3 points. But they were 5.5-point dogs at home. Like, I don't know what you need to see from them to like expect them to be. I didn't think it'd be super competitive. I did like the 5.5, but I didn't think they were going to win that game. And maybe, being down 17 versus being down 7-10 the whole time is a little bit different.
Eden,
But
can I just say, maybe it's because growing up being a Browns fan, like I've heard the story before of like, oh man, they have so much fight. Like they don't give up. The close games, they almost won. Like I just,
right.
maybe it's
But
like that in me, that like I've heard the story before. Like they were
Right,
close.
but
They
the
almost had
the
it.
way that you two are making it sound is like
Yeah.
they should be like a near 500 team. And like that's the expectation, which I don't think that's the expectation this season. I think
fair.
there's still very much so in the building process. And I think, culture takes time. Like, I think a great guy, an example of someone who brought in a culture, Monty Williams for the Phoenix Suns. Like, we weren't successful in year 1. We were more successful in year 2, but year 3 was really like, wow, you can see what he's done in 3 years.
True.
And the question is, do things go at the same speed in the NFL? Sometimes it takes 1 year, you just got to bring the right guy in. But I think when you look at this roster as a whole and their talent, like, I don't see that being a 1 to 2 year thing. So I think they're going to improve this year. I like them to win this week as well.
How many years do you need?
And I think Dan Campbell is a guy that I believe in just because of the values he instills in his guys and how he coaches them hard and how they respond to him. So I think it's going to take time, but you need to build that grit factor before you get the talent. And then once you combine the culture with the talent, that's when you're going to see them take off. But ultimately, I don't think they have the talent right now, but that doesn't mean they can't build the grit factor that's going to win them 5 or 6 games this year. They end up at 5 or 6.
Ryan actually asked an interesting question. He goes, how much time do you need?
Yeah.
And I think there's two answers to that question. Well, there's actually 2 questions you should ask. It's how much time do you really need? And how much time do NFL coaches really get? Right?
True.
How much time do you really need to rebuild a Detroit Lions team that traded away their one franchise player, that quarterback, for a bottom end QB with no roster talent, no weapons, a completely new coaching staff? You probably need 4 or 5 years to build that team. You really do.
I was going to say, I don't think you can fairly assess until year 4.
You need 4 or 5 years to bring in your players, to coach the way you want to coach, to build the system you want to build. But the NFL, organizations don't give more than 3 years. You need to start showing results by year 3.
Yep.
At the very latest. I mean, there's guys that get fired after 1 or 2 years. The Cardinals fired Steve Wilkes after 1 season after going 3-13.
The Detroit Lions fired Jim Caldwell when he had a 500 season. Like, yeah.
Well, the Detroit Lions are the pinnacle of shitty organizations and shitty management, but I mean,
right behind the Browns, but yeah.
not anymore, baby, not anymore. Andrew Berry, my boy.
So
anyway.
I think my point is, I think Dan Campbell's going to need 4 years, 5 years to really rebuild this team into becoming a playoff.
He won't get it.
A playoff caliber team.
He's not going to
get that? No, which is why he's going to need to win some games this year. He's going to need to win 5 or 6 games.
So,
and I think that's good. I think that's a good progression. And then year 3, he's going to have to win a little bit more. And then by year 4, he's going to have to start showing that he can compete with, higher end teams.
Like compete. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Look, we'll see what happens, but like if they go out this year and have 3 or 4 wins, I just won't be impressed. And I'd understand if like there were questions, right? Like I just would. You just got to see. I just have to see some small improvement, like incremental
Ryan,
improvement.
let's look at your Cavaliers though, for example.
Yeah,
You guys have been bad for 3 years. Finally, year 4 of this rebuild, you're probably going to make the playoffs. I think it takes
there was
time.
but there was incremental improvement, right? We hit the bottom of the barrel the year LeBron left. The year after, a few more wins, got a couple more pieces. The year after, finally got our head coach in JB, got a few more wins. The year after, made the jump to being a contender for the playoffs until, in my opinion, injuries derailed that. But like, there was definite improvement there. And then there was a big step this past year. And that was the third year.
You named 3 or 4 years of time. Let's give Dan Campbell this season at the very least to show that he's improved.
But you also have to understand the reason the Cavaliers were there is because of aggressive front office management, right? So I think that's also a very important thing. You talk about how coaches don't get enough time because they need 4 or maybe 5 years, right? But they only get 3 or 2 even, right? If you know that, right, and you're the GM, because typically GMs will move out with the coaches, a lot of times they'll clean house, right? They'll go both the GM and the head coach, right? It's just how it goes, right? So if you're the GM, you're like, all right, we got 3 years. We're going to try to be as aggressive as we can. And that's what the Cavaliers did. And that's why they are where they are, because they went and got guys. They were more aggressive than almost any GM I've seen in the NBA. And
it's
what I'm
harder
saying
to do that in the NFL.
It is harder, but what I'm saying is right. Like if you know that, you have to try and go be aggressive. So like, that's something that not a lot of guys do, but something that maybe should be done more. But anyway, it's just kind of something I wanted to mention is like, aggressiveness in the front office is pretty important to being successful quicker. I mean, a quicker turnaround, but
fair point.
It's an interesting discussion. It's a good discussion. Eden, I don't know if you want to say something else before we move on. No, yeah. You're good.
I just think you got to give him time.
Yeah.
More than a year in a game. And look,
yes, that's true.
I like that his team doesn't quit on him. I think that's the first sign that you as a head coach you're planting the right seeds. Your team doesn't quit on you. I think that's a very big step in the right direction. And winning takes time. It takes time to learn how to win games. Even when the Lions maybe will start winning a few games this year, they're going to lose games that they probably should have won. I think learning to win consistently is incredibly difficult. And I think Dan Campbell has it going in the right direction is my whole point. But
fair. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Got to give him more than a year in a game. I think we can all agree on that. And we'll move on. Look, we can move on and talk about some games this week. We can kind of just give our takes on these games. I don't know if who wants to start us off. I think we can have Eden start us off. I feel like, Trevor and I were talking quite a lot there. So I'm going to let Eden go ahead, take a game. What game do you have this week? What interests you? And who do you think wins?
It involves one of the teams we were just talking about, actually.
Really?
I'm going to look at the Monday Night Football game that we have this week with the Minnesota Vikings traveling to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles there. And I think, this is going to be – I think it's going to be a fun game. The Eagles clearly with their run-dominant offense are very effective on the ground and are able to score a lot of points, which we saw last year and kind of came out of nowhere. But they're so effective on the ground. It's going to be interesting to see them go up against Minnesota's front seven. And then at the same time, Minnesota on the other side with this new head coach coming from the Sean McVay coaching tree. And you saw the damage that Justin Jefferson was able to do last week. I think Trevor saw it more than anyone else. But anyways, I'm just very excited.
In fantasy, I did, yeah.
Ryan didn't even react to that. I was kind of bummed at that. But
Sorry.
But I think it's going to be a really fun game. I think these are two fun teams to watch. I think these will be two playoff teams. And I ultimately think these are going to be two division winners going at it in this Monday night matchup. And I picked 3 underdogs last week. And I'm going to pick another underdog again this week. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. And I just really like the Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson connection. And ultimately, I think, their defense came to play against the Packers last week. It's going to be interesting. This game's really going to come down to who wins up front, which after week 1, it looks like that would favor the home team in the Eagles. Maybe I'll go to the game. I just thought about that. That'd be fun.
Oh my
But
gosh.
go and root against the Eagles like I did last time. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings, my pick to win the NFC North.
Eden, can I just explain why you're totally wrong about this game? It's a
Sure. And
fairly
it's going to
simple
be
argument.
28-24.
All right, yeah. I'm gonna disagree, and like right off the bat, I'm gonna say it's gonna be 31-17 Philly, and I'm gonna tell you why. Look, here's the thing. Philly's defense did not show up against Detroit somehow. They have a lot more talent. They added a bunch of players in the offseason, and they gave up some touchdowns in the fourth that they shouldn't have. That scared me a little bit. But the reason I have Philly winning this game and winning it at the end of the day fairly handily is because of the run game. And Minnesota's below average run defense. Let's put it that way. Look, Green Bay was awful last week, right? They couldn't do anything. What's the one thing they could do? They could run the ball. They averaged over 6 yards a carry, 6.2 yards a carry last week against the Minnesota defense, which is really bad. That's a lot of yards per carry. And it's Green Bay's fault for not exploiting that. They didn't really exploit that the way they should have. They only gave Dylan Jones 15 carries total, which is just awful coaching, in my opinion. And I get they were down, so like you had to pass more, but still, exploit what you're good at. And what's Philly good at? They're not just good at running; they're elite at running. They have Jalen Hurts, who I believe had 17 carries last week. You know, he's basically a running back who sometimes throws, and he's gonna run a lot. And Miles Sanders, you know, I like him, my boy. He's actually good. He's getting some looks now. Him and Jalen Hurts are gonna.
You guys are friends. You guys know each other.
Him and Jalen Hurts are gonna run all over the Minnesota Vikings defense that couldn't seem to stop AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones last week in about 15 carries. So, like, I think that's the blueprint for success. And like, because it's Philly's strength and Minnesota's seeming weakness, I think it's going to be, you know, exploited. And I think that Philly wins this game, and it's at home. So I think that's going to help matters too. Jefferson will get his. He's probably the best receiver in football outside of Devontae Adams, in my opinion.
Andy Isabella.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's there. And look, I
You know who's fire though is Greg Dortch.
Greg Dortch.
I love him.
Oh my Lord. Yeah, I'm just waiting for D-Hop to come back. But look, it's going to be a good game for most of the game, but I think Philly pulls away in the end because their running game is just really good, and Minnesota struggles to stop the run.
I actually agree with Ryan here again. Ryan's reasoning was a little weird. I didn't follow it, but
What do you mean?
I
It's
agree
weird
with Ryan on the end
reasoning?
result. I agree with Ryan on the end result. The
Okay.
Eagles are going to win, and there's a couple of reasons why. One, Ryan actually did touch on this. The Eagles can run the ball, man. They can really run the ball. I mean, they went for 220 yards on the ground last week. That's pretty unheard of for an NFL team. And when you can run the ball that effectively, you can chew clock and kind of neutralize an offense and keep Justin Jefferson on that sideline. The second reason I think the Eagles are going to win is A.J. Brown. We mentioned how good this running game is. A.J. Brown put up the 5th most receiving yards in NFL history by a guy making a debut for his team. He put up 155 yards on 10 catches. So clearly Jalen Hurts can get him the ball. Ryan says he throws the ball sometimes. He can get the ball to at least A.J. Brown.
He can.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Philly is not a one-dimension offense. They can throw the ball if they have to. And their running game will help keep Minnesota on the sidelines. And here's reason number 3, and this is ultimately why the Vikings will lose this game. It's kind of a 2-part answer. One, the Vikings are coming off a really big high. That was an emotional win. You know, your head coach, home opener, division rival, Aaron Rodgers. That a lot of emotion went into that game. It was a big day for the Vikings. It was a great win. But it's like the stock market. What comes up must come down. And the Vikings are going to come down back to earth a little bit. And they're on the road in a big Monday Night Football game. And what does Kirk Cousins do on big nationally televised games? He comes up short. He's just known for that. He's great at, you know, I saw a great quote. It's like, he looks like Aaron Rodgers at 10 a.m. on a Sunday, but then he looks like Baker,
Yes,
on
sir.
national TV. So I actually just made that up myself right there.
Wait.
But what?
No, go ahead. No, I was going to agree with you.
Kirk Cousins historically just does not look good in big games. The Vikings are coming off a high, and I like the Eagles' running attack, and I think it's going to be able to neutralize that Vikings offense, that Vikings air raid, just enough. And I'm going to go with a 27-20 victory for the Eagles.
There you go. And Trevor, I just want to say, I think Kirk Cousins is like 0-8 on Monday Night Football games. What is it? Something like that. It's really bad. Like he does
There
not
you
win on
go.
Monday Night
See,
Football.
that just
He,
further proves
he,
my
he
point.
might have finally had a win. I just remember seeing that back when he was on a Monday Night Football game, and then he proceeded to lose. So his record on Monday Night Football is really bad. So he might have gotten a win since then. I just know he struggles a lot, and that's when he's playing on Monday night. So we'll see how that goes.
2-9.
Yes. Okay. So he got a couple of wins. Good for him. So it's up.
So
to
he's
2-9.
2-1 in his last 3. That's what I like to hear.
So look, we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting game, actually. I think it'll be fun. I agreed, and I just hope Miles Sanders, my boy, has a big game because I can beat Trevor's fantasy team. But look, we'll move on from this game. And Trevor, do you want to go or should I go ahead? What do you want to do?
Well, did you want to talk about Baltimore, Miami?
I did. I was going to.
Okay, I wanted to talk about that.
We can just talk about that game. Yeah, that's fine.
Let's do that.
Yeah. Look, Baltimore, Miami. I think Trevor and I are going to have differing opinions on this, but this is an interesting game because I'm a big Baltimore fan as opposed to these two, compared to these two, I think.
But you're also a big Miami
and I'm also a Miami fan. I'm a Miami believer. Look, I've said this for a while. I'm going to say it again. Miami is very similar to Cleveland in 2019. Yeah. The year everything came together, right? It's very similar. A lot of talent on both sides of the ball, with the only question being really at quarterback. A new offensive-minded head coach who runs a solid system, came from a good coaching tree. In this one in Kyle Shanahan, right? And they've got everything. It's just, do they have Tua, right? And is Tua good enough to lead them to consistent wins? And we're going to see this on Sunday. Can he lead them to a win against a high-quality opponent, which the Ravens are? So it'll be a really big test for Miami. I think if they win this game, I'm going to be really they could make the playoffs if they win a game like this. It would give me a lot of confidence in a team like Miami. I do think Baltimore wins, it being at home, and me also thinking Baltimore's a great team, very well coached, great defense, or pretty good, always a solid defense. Lamar, obviously, Mark Andrews being there. J.K. Dobbins, I believe, is making his return. I believe. I'm not positive on that, but if it's not this week, it's going to be next. I think that they do end up winning, but it's going to be fun because both of these teams have a lot of talent. And I think that, Tyreek and Jalen Waddle are going to have, a fun time. I think it's going to be a close game, but look.
They're going to have a fun time. That's some analysis you got there.
Look, I just like my boy Tyreek, okay? Trevor doubts.
It's the Feelings Over Facts podcast. I didn't know that.
Whoa. Tyreek is okay. Look, Tyreek is a legit top receiver, okay? All points aside.
Oh, yeah,
right?
of course.
Trevor just doesn't think Tua can throw further than 25 yards down the field. But
am I on record saying that? I don't think I've ever said that.
Whoa. Trevor, can Tua consistently throw down the field?
I've heard he throws
not at a very high.
That's what I heard too.
From a source close to the situation.
Yeah. From a certain receiver involved with both quarterbacks.
Tyreek Hill said that he can.
Yes, he did.
We'll see about that. We'll see. We'll see how much Tyreek likes.
I don't necessarily agree with that, but anyway, look, it's a big prove-it game for Miami, and for Baltimore, it's just, can they take care of business? Are they as legit as I think they are? And I think they are. Baltimore's going to win the AFC North, and when they win this game, it's going to reaffirm that fact for me. Look, if we have to put a score on it, I'll go like 27-24. They'll put up some points. It'll slow down later in the game, and I think Baltimore gets it done at the end of the day. Trevor, go ahead. What do you have to say about this game? What are you gonna? You're also gonna say Baltimore, I think, but is it going to be this close? Is the question.
No, this game will not be close.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not a believer in Miami, but I have to recognize that the roster is a lot better than it has been in years past. On both sides of the ball, I do think they have a very solid defense. I think that's an underrated part of their team.
Yep.
And look, they've invested in this offense. They've brought in players. They brought in Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, decent running backs. But then you get to the receivers. They bring in Tyreek Hill. They've invested in this offensive line. They've drafted really well on the defensive side of the ball. I believe Xavier Howard, Jevon Holland are both solid players in the secondary for this team. So this is a Miami team that can compete. It can compete, but I just think they're too limited at quarterback. I just think Tua is too limited. I haven't seen it with him. I haven't seen that ability to take the top off like he did in college, where he was just dominant, more dominant. Now, look, he always had like NFL wide receivers going up against, D3 corners, but I haven't seen that same Tua in the NFL. I just think that the game in the NFL is like everything's bigger, everything's faster, everything's stronger. And I think Tua in college could get away with certain things like running and, trying certain circus throws at the college level that he can't get away with at the NFL level, right? I haven't seen enough wow factor from Tua. I think he's too limited at quarterback. And on the road, I don't love Miami. And I think Baltimore is going to look a lot sharper than they did week 1. They got the job done. And look, Lamar didn't look bad. He just didn't look he didn't play in the preseason. There was a little bit of rust there.
Yeah.
And I'm a believer in this Baltimore team. Look, I didn't pick them to win the division, but I think they're very solid on both sides of the ball. They have an elite tight end. They have a very solid running game, obviously, with Lamar Jackson. And if this defense can stay healthy, this defense is no joke. And I think this defense will frustrate Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle more than the depleted New England secondary did last week. So this is a prove-it game. Ryan's right. This is a prove-it game for Miami. This is a prove-it game for Tua. Let's see what you can do. There's no more excuses. You have the weapons. You have an offensive-minded coach. You know how I feel about that whole Brian Flores situation. We won't even get into that. But there's no excuses now for Tua. It's either you deliver or you don't, and I don't think he's going to deliver. Give me the Ravens 26-17. I'm going to go Baltimore.
Wow. Okay, a bigger margin. Can I ask you one question, Trevor, before we go to Eden? Can I just ask, you said you have to give Dan Campbell time, right? You said he needs, ideally 4 years, right? How much time do you give a guy like Tua to see if he's your franchise quarterback? I'm curious because it seems like you're almost running out of time here, and it's been what?
He's gonna get this season, right?
Okay.
He's gonna get this season to prove it. I think that's all you really look. I mean, Kyler Murray got extended after 3 years. The Cardinals saw what they needed to see in 3 years. Tua's had some injury issues, but this is his 3rd year, right? Like you got to go prove it. And my thing is, they've invested around you. They've brought in receivers. They've drafted receivers. They have, 2 elite wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, there's just no excuses anymore. And they brought in an offensive-minded head coach. So it's like, what more does Tua need, for him to perform? Does he need a massage on the sideline?
This feels like the Baker conversation. This is so funny, but you're right. Yeah, I'm just curious.
I'm just saying, like, there's just no excuses for Tua anymore.
Yeah.
Like, make plays or don't. Like, go out there and win a game that you aren't projected to win or don't. And I just don't trust him at this point in time. I need to see it before I get on the Tua bandwagon.
Fair. Eden, what do you think about this game as a whole, or anything that we were just talking about?
I think I love this game, and I kind of keep going back and forth on who I like in this game.
Eden, you're off. Your picks have been bad so far. You need to ride with me, Baltimore.
Ultimately, I'm going to do something I haven't done yet this season and pick the favorite. I'm going to pick Baltimore to win for the first time.
Okay.
But I'm really interested by that spread, and I would have loved to ask Ryan about this spread, but we have a different one for him today. But ultimately, I thought we were doing that one. Said pick a side, I would pick Miami plus 3.5. So I think this game is really close.
Jack, we are doing that spread with Ryan.
But ultimately, I'm going to stick with the home team in Baltimore. I think Lamar Jackson, you'll see a better game from him. But I think ultimately this is going to come down to some point towards the end of the game.
Trevor, is
Eden, I thought this was the spread we were going to ask Ryan.
No, it wasn't. Was it?
Yeah, go look at your text. I said, let's do the Ravens one.
Wow, folks, there's been a miscommunication on which.
Jack, which one were you thinking? Which one were you thinking?
I thought we were going to do a different one, but now that I read my text, I must have read my text wrong. So,
well, which game were you thinking of?
Well, I was thinking either that or the Colts one, but I don't know. We can ask.
I think
Ryan
this would be a better. Let's do this.
I don't think what I've said influenced Ryan.
No, I don't think so.
Gave us his answer beforehand. So
I did.
Yeah, he did. That's true.
What did I just say? 27-24? Is that what I just said? Isn't that what I said for the score prediction? Pretty sure I did. So yeah, there's your answer, right?
So
Ryan's answer is Miami plus 3.5.
There you go.
Ryan might finally be right once.
There you go. I'm riding with Eden.
We all know with Jack's picks. As we transition into Jack's picks for the week, and by picks, I have one pick this week, but I think it's something that I really like.
Yeah,
it's something that I feel pretty confident about after watching both teams in week 1, and I'm kind of surprised that this is the line. But TJ Watt will not be playing with his pec injury. Najee Harris will be healthy. Pittsburgh is home, coming off a win against a good divisional opponent. And now they're playing a team in New England who did not look very good. But, the Bill Belichick factor, that's always a factor. But ultimately, I think this is the easiest pick of the week. You have to take Pittsburgh plus 2.5 points at home.
Oh, yeah.
And I like it so much. My pick is going to be Pittsburgh plus 2.5, but I think my personal bet, I'm going to take them money line this week.
Interesting.
But as far as Jack's picks goes, which I have a 1-0 record on for this season, just wanted to put that out there with a big parlay last week. I'm going to tone it down a little bit this week. I was excited for week 1. I'm ultimately going to go with Pittsburgh plus 2.5 at home against the Patriots.
Here, I'm gonna play Vegas for a second, and I'm gonna explain why the line is what it is. Ready? So I'm Vegas, Caesar's Palace. I just was there like 2 weeks ago. Yay me. Anyways, here's what Vegas is thinking. Week 1 was just a total fluke. It was a total fluke. Pittsburgh won that game against Cincinnati, but did Pittsburgh win that game or did Cincinnati lose that game? I mean,
God.
Cincinnati 5 turnovers to what was it, 0 or 1? It was 5-0, right?
Yep.
5 turnovers, and it required a miraculous blocked extra point from Minkah Fitzpatrick and another missed field goal in overtime for Pittsburgh to win that game. And the second reason is Bill Belichick. You kind of touched on it. Trubisky did not look good. Trubisky looked bad. He looked limited. They didn't trust him. And Belichick is going to figure out a way to slow him down. And the third reason is slow him down, but more like stop him completely. I shouldn't even say slow him down.
Trevor, how did Mac
The third
Jones
reason,
look
real
in
quick,
week 1?
Ryan, real quick. The third reason is no TJ Watt. And I texted these guys throughout that game. I said, TJ Watt should be in the MVP conversation. He single-handedly changed that game multiple times with sacks, tip passes at the line of scrimmage, an interception. And TJ Watt not playing is a huge loss for that defense, which is why I get the New England spread. And historically, teams that lose by double digits in week 1 generally perform well against the spread in week 2. So Vegas is basically saying we believe in New England and we don't believe in Pittsburgh, regardless of what we saw in week 1.
Yeah, wow. I don't know what inspires them to be so favorable towards New England. I don't understand it.
I'm staying away from this game.
Yeah,
I don't like either.
What do you see from Mac Jones?
They're on the road. New England lost so much talent in the offseason. They have don't get me wrong, the Cincinnati Bengals defense is good. That defense was one of the reasons why they ended up going to the Super Bowl on top of great play from Burrow and Chase and all those guys on the offensive side. You give up 5 turnovers and you hold that team to 20 points in regulation. That's a game.
Right. And one was a pick
It's crazy
6.
that they could have won that game, and it's crazy. I think they should have won that game if we're being honest. But I don't know. There is a little bit of that fear factor in me. But when I saw that line, I thought it was ridiculous, and I can't not take a line that I think is ridiculous.
Eden, you look, it's an away game, and their quarterback's not good. Mac Jones, I don't think he might even be worse from last year, and I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but I know Trevor's happy because he might be right about Mac Jones. But that receiver room, Eden, is probably the weakest in football. It is awful. It is awful. Jacoby Myers is their top receiver. He's their top receiver.
No, they brought him in.
You're paying Nelson Aguilar $11 million a year.
He's good. What do you mean?
Kendrick Bourne's getting paid $8 million a year. I mean, these are just awful contracts, and they aren't that talented. And it's just bad. I just don't see them going into Pittsburgh and covering that. It's just wow. I don't see them winning. They're not going to win.
I think that game will end in a tie. I might bet on a tie in that game. I think both those teams are so bad, but their coaches are so good. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I ask an inexperienced better question? Can you bet on a tie, or is that not something?
You can.
You
can, and you'll get great odds for it.
I mean, yeah, I believe it. I mean, this must be unbelievable odds. But anyway, wow. Okay.
My pick, Trevor's picks of the week, and I had
Trevor,
I had 4 spread picks in a parlay. I went 2-2. I went 2-2. But I did call the Houston Texans. I said that was my favorite bet of the week. Houston Texans plus 8.5. Ryan's a witness, right, Ryan?
I agreed with you. Yeah, but you did say that. Yeah. Yeah.
My favorite bet of this week, I'm going to go with another underdog on the road. Oh, wait, no. Houston was at home. I'm going to go with an underdog on the road. The Arizona Cardinals will cover plus 5.5. They will. Plus 5.5. People forget this Cardinals team on the road last year went 8-1, and our only loss was to the Lions. They lost to the Lions on the road. So, I mean, maybe we'll lose, but I think 5.5 is too many points. I think the Cardinals are getting a little bit healthier, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, getting Trayvon Mullen and JJ Watt back. Hopefully, it looks like they're going to play. No Rondale Moore again, which sucks, but you know, that's okay. Hopefully we can get the running game more involved than we did in week 1. But yeah, I'm going to go Cardinals plus 5.5, and I'm going to go Cardinals to win outright.
Wow.
I'm calling it right now. Cardinals money line is your bet for this weekend. I shouldn't be talking about my teams because I'm biased, but I do think the Cardinals are going to bounce back. And I think we're going to look like the Cardinals team, the elite version of the Cardinals team, the team that shows up in September, October usually. So Cardinals money line. If you're feeling a little bit more cautious, I'd go plus 5.5 in a heartbeat. But there's Trevor's picks for the week.
Eden, before we end this, can I just say, do you think the Cardinals will beat your Las Vegas Raiders? I'm just curious. Like, if you
I don't know if they'll beat them,
if you share this enthusiasm.
But I do think 5.5 points is way too many. So I do like that. Sorry, I'm watching this Old Dominion game. Let's go, baby. To give you all the viewers at home an update. Sorry for being unfocused right now, but I
this is
bet on Old Dominion to upset Virginia today. Virginia just, I believe, I don't know if they went for it or if they missed a field goal, but they missed about a 30-yard field goal. And Old Dominion is now moving down 6 with 2 minutes to play, now on UVA's side of the field.
I want to preface, look, your college picks are garbage, but your NFL picks are usually
I went with the upsets today, but we'll see. Who knows? But anyways, in terms of going back to this game, I think Arizona will play better than they did last week. I don't know how well that's going to be. And I think the biggest concern is the defense. But I think the offense plays great. Like we've said, it's, you have the Oakland pass or the Vegas pass rush, and then what else do they have on the defensive side of the ball? So if the receivers are able to get open quick enough for Kyler Murray, he will have success. I think 5.5 is definitely way too many points. I don't know if I would pick them to win outright, but I would definitely take Cardinals plus 5.5.
Well, we'll see what happens.
That's not my pick for the week.
Yeah, I know. I know.
So wait, Eden, is your bet Pittsburgh spread or is it Pittsburgh money line?
My pick for the week is Pittsburgh spread.
Okay.
But if I had to bet, I think I might bet money line. We'll see.
Yeah, look, we'll see what happens. We'll see if these picks hit. I know I'll be right on Philly. I mean, that's
right. Ryan, what are your thoughts on the Cardinals spread?
Or Miami, sorry. The Cardinals spread? I'll be gutsy. I'm going to say that the Raiders cover. They win by 6 or more. They're going to.
Why?
I'm going to say it.
Can I hear why, please?
It's in Vegas. Derek Carr won't have that bad of a game again. He had 3 picks last week. He'll throw more around to other players. Their defense will be good enough because the Cardinals don't have enough offensive firepower with D-Hop and Rondale Moore out of the game. And I think that the Cardinals defense will have trouble stopping Devontae Adams, who I think will go for over 150 and multiple.
You ever heard of
Trayvon
Mullen? Trayvon Mullen. I'm throwing that name out right now. Trayvon Mullen.
Wow. I feel bad for him. He's going to be crying when he goes to the locker room tomorrow. So, look, it'll be a fun game. But, yeah, the Raiders will cover and they'll win. So that's my guess. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'll be right. But we'll see.
To be real clear, the official Ryan's spread pick of the week will be Miami plus 3.5. You're going Miami plus 3.5, correct?
Yep. That's correct. I'm doubting it a little bit, but yes, that's correct.
That's not a good sign if he's already down here.
But we'll see.
We'll give you the option to switch. Do you want to switch?
No. I'm riding with Eden. Eden said plus 3.5. I'm gonna do it. All right, I'm gonna run with it.
I can't wait to watch Baltimore win by 21 tomorrow, and I'm gonna come on this podcast next week, and I'm gonna say I told you so. I'm just warning you now. I am. And
I'll say I told you so about the.
Or if the Dolphins win outright, then I look really stupid. So.
Yeah, that'd be kind of crazy because I said the Ravens would win too. So. look, yeah, we'll see what happens, but I don't know. That's about it from me. I don't know if there's anything else. There's anything, any shout outs, anything you want to mention. Trevor, I know you usually have something to say here.
Oh my god.
Do I have a shout out? I don't really have a shout out at this point.
No shout outs for the week, Trevor. Nothing.
I have a couple thumbs down, but I don't really want to go into that. Shout outs. Shout out. I got nothing. I literally got nothing.
Okay, hey, you should have shouted out Mike Williams, your boy. He caught a one-handed pass for Trevor. That was a big game for Trevor. He needed
That's
that
true.
for fantasy.
That's true. He did. That was big for me in fantasy. That's a good point.
Yeah, Mike Williams. What a
How
guy.
about you, Ryan? Any shout outs or no?
Shout out Cade York, the Cleveland kicker from last week. We didn't
Okay.
really talk about it, but wow, what a first game. Can I just say? A 58-yarder to win it, 4 for 4 from field goals, 2 for 2 on extra points. He was sensational as a rookie. I mean, wow. It was just awesome. That field goal would have been good from 70. So great. Eden's having a tough time over here, ladies and gentlemen. But Cade York was amazing for the Browns last week. And yeah, Eden's bet is wrong again. So that's what we'll wrap up on here. That is fantastic. That is elite.
What do you mean? I'm 1-0 and
Look, we'll be back. We'll be back next week. We'll see Eden's bets for the week next week. We'll see if it holds true. We'll see if he stays undefeated. But I don't know. We'll see. With that, we'll wrap this up, and we'll be back next week with episode number 94, Trevor, right? I think that's right.
That's
number
crazy.
94 next week. It's wild stuff. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. We'll see you then.